Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today is Viewer Appreciation Day. We've got on the other end of the Zoom, longtime viewer, fellow Nearfest attendee who may or may not have met in person 15 or more years ago at Nearfest. I don't remember. I don't know. I'm sure we did. Anthony Ferraro. Anthony, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
It's a pleasure. And so, how it works here with this viewer appreciation thing, there are certain viewers that watch a lot and comment a lot and have lots of really good interaction and knowledge about bands and things like that. And that's the stuff that I kind of look for to bring someone on the show. And so I've had an idea to bring Anthony on for a while. And I know how big a Steve Hackett fan he is. And I know how long I've promised folks that I was going to do a Steve Hackett show. So when I approached Anthony about this, I said, you want to help me out on Steve Hackett? He goes, yeah, I can do that. So, and then, we had to figure, this is an enormous discography, right? So we had to figure out, well, which albums are we going to include here? Which ones are we not? So basically what we're doing is we're doing the 17 main prog rock albums, okay? All 17 of them. We're not going to include the Genesis Revisited stuff, although we'll probably talk about it. We're not going to include the blues album or two that he has, and we're not going to do the classical albums, right? So just the full band albums, starting with Voyage of the Acolyte and going all the way to, what's the name of the most recent one? I forget which one is that.
At the Edge of Light.
At the Edge of Light, right? So all of those, everything in between. Like I said, with the exception of the Genesis Revisited stuff. And the reason why we're not doing that is because Anthony and I are both huge Genesis fans, and I don't think it would be fair that we automatically catapult Genesis Revisited 1 and 2 all the way at the top of the list just because it has those legendary songs on there. And I would probably be inclined to do that. So I said, you know what? That's not fair to the other albums. So if you don't have them, go out and get them. They're both great. Because quite frankly, who else is playing these classic Genesis songs? Nobody but him. And these are fantastic. So it's, his more recent band and, tons of guest stars on this one doing all sorts of stuff from those early Genesis albums. And these are absolutely great. So you should check them out. They're not going to be included in this list though. So without saying any more, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony to give us his number 17 pick.
My number 17 pick, which might tick off a lot of Hackett fans, but the newer stuff really hasn't resonated with me, except for, which I'll talk about later. But I think number 17, I'm going to have to go with the Night Siren. I saw the tour, but in my opinion, I love Steve as a guitar player. Vocally, sometimes it's great and sometimes it's just not there. And the last two records, I believe, it's just, he's just concentrating on singing so much. It's just I think it kind of ruins some of the music. So I'm going to go with the Night Siren for 2017 as my number 17.
Yeah. Sometimes I struggle with some of the newer albums. The newer albums are pretty long, and I'm generally hit or miss with his vocals, like you said. I think I'm finding though that he's, to me, sounding like he's become a better singer in recent years. And there's always the thing too, and you could probably attest to this, where the newer stuff, and he comes out with albums pretty regularly, we haven't resonated with them long enough yet. We don't have enough history with them yet. So it's hard to match them up against these classic albums that we've been listening to for decades, right? So I really struggled with how to balance the newer stuff with some of the older stuff. But thankfully, there's a lot of those 80s albums, some of which I'm not too crazy about, that kind of made this a little bit easier for me anyway. So, but I totally see where you're coming from. And
part of the problem too with the newer stuff is each tour is focusing on, an anniversary of Wind and Wuthering or an anniversary of Selling England, and you only get like one or two songs, so you really don't get. The one album I bought at the show, so I really didn't have any relationship with it till afterwards. And I always like to try to have a relationship with a new album when I go to a show, so I have like a feeling what I'm going to hear. So I think maybe that might be part of the problem too, because each tour is always focusing on the past, not really his soul, but just the past.
Yeah, especially recently, right? Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So, all right. So my number 17, I'm going to go back to 1981. And again, I would say I like all these albums to an extent. this is one of the more, I never bought this back in the day, and I only just got this a couple months ago, but I'm going to go with Cured from 81. And I think this has some good stuff on it. This is probably his most commercial album, maybe. Good songwriting on the album. I think there's a lot of really good melodies and a lot of kind of breezy, poppy little touches of prog here and there. Hope I Don't Wake could have been the single. I mean, or it could have been a hit, I should say. I like that. Picture Postcard kind of sounds like Supertramp, and I dig Supertramp. I think some of the albums in this period have that kind of similar feel to Supertramp. Can't Let Go, nice quirky song. You got Air Conditioned Nightmare, which is
That's a good one.
Killer.
That's a really cool one.
Right. Funny Feeling, I dig. Overnight Sleeper has some really, those trademark like crying guitar lines that I love from Hackett. The rest of it to me is kind of bland, but it's okay. It's not a terrible album. I just think it's probably for me his his least interesting album. And that's a absolutely awful cover. I don't know what he was thinking with that, but
well, the drum machine doesn't help either.
No, it does not. But it's it's 1981. That was kind of the norm back then. So
well, it's too bad that they broke up that band, because the 2 albums before it, I mean, that band was with his brother on the flute, and I mean, his brother's on a couple of tracks on that album, but you could just tell it's a difference. I mean, people go from Defector to Cure and they're like, what is this?
Yeah, what happened?
But I think it was record company pressure or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. Well, because you got to figure his former band is doing big business right around that time.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, Steve, come on. It's like, if we want to keep you on the label, your old mates are the top of the charts. What are you doing for us here, right? So, yeah, absolutely. All right, back to you for number 16.
All right, number 16, I'm going to go with At the Edge of Light, his most recent one. I saw the tour. Again, it's like the Night Siren. It's a lot of backtracking vocals, and I think he played a couple when I saw him about a year ago, and they're not bad, but it's not something I reach for. That's what I mean. I'm glad I got it to support him, but it's just not something I reach for. But one thing I did buy at the show, I got a Steve Hackett. See if I can show it here. Can you? I guess you can't see it. Too small. It's like, where is it? Come on. There we go. Steve Hackett keychain.
That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
A little memento from the show.
There you go. Yeah, managing, I will tell you, since it's your first time doing this, managing the camera to get it to appear on the Zoom screen is a little tricky. You can ask Chris Allo and a bunch of other people who still can't figure it out. They're like, was this in the picture? Like, what's going on? All right, my number 16, I'm going to go up to 1993 for Guitar Noir. I do love this cover. I think the cover is great.
Yeah, the cover's cool.
Kind of a laid back album. You got a mix of acoustic songs and electric songs. Sierra Kamada, good tasty playing on that tune. Vampire with a Healthy Appetite. I love when Hackett just like goes for the jugular. Those, like, I call it like the Hackett savage guitar parts, and there's a lot of them in that song. I'm not big on the spoken word vocals. He does that a lot in some of these albums. I'm like, not really into that. Take These Pearls. Nice melodies, some good acoustic picking on that. But overall, I find the album pretty mellow, not really memorable. And I think it was right around this time, like in the early mid 90s, I was like really having an issue with his vocals. And I was like, and I've kind of lessened up on that in recent years. I think his vocals have gotten better, and I especially don't like the spoken word stuff. It just, for whatever reason, it's just like, the music is great. Then he comes in and he's like kind of talking. I'm like, oh man, it's like, it doesn't really work for me. But I mean, this, again, not a terrible album, couple really good tracks. The rest of it, okay, not too bad. Back to you.
All right, so we're at number 15.
15, yep.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with Guitar Noir, number 15.
Yep.
I have a Japanese pressing. Sierra is fantastic. He has a habit of writing songs about vampires, I've noticed. I think he did one on the recent one too. But as you said, some of it's really good, but the spoken words is just kind of cringeworthy. It's like Neil Peart and Roll the Bones. I mean, it's just, it's not that. It's not like a rap, but the spoken word just. Ugh.
Yeah, it kind of kills the momentum that the song might have, right? It's just, yeah.
It reminds me of the lady from Gong, from Other Gong. She always does a spoken word.
Yeah, yeah.
Jilly.
Yeah, Gilly Smith, right? Yeah.
Jilly Smith.
Yep. Yeah, I remember when when Guitar Noir first came out, I was pretty excited to get it, and then I listened to it and I was like, yeah, this is not quite what I thought it was going to be. You know what? And most of the album would probably work great as an instrumental album, which I
Yeah.
think a lot of these albums would, to be honest. So
His guitar playing is always tasty. I mean, his tone and you know, some of those. I know this isn't a Genesis thread, but some of those old Genesis records. Good God,
yeah.
just beautiful.
And you know, it's really scary because like the old Genesis albums he was on were never guitar heavy albums. But could you imagine if they like kind of let him loose, kind of like a lot of the stuff he's done in his solo career on those old albums? Whew. Just imagine that.
Well, what's amazing, if you really think about their history and the way Tony Banks was, how did he get Horizons on Foxtrot? I mean, it should have never happened the way they voted on things, but he got it on.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a miracle that he got it on. Beautiful track, but
that was his one shot. That's it.
One shot.
I just, you know, I can't help but think sometimes like if he would have stayed in the band and like what, you know, and then, well, obviously it wouldn't have been called, and then there were three, but what that album and Duke and all the following ones might have sounded like, you know, obviously it never happened. It's never going to happen, but sometimes you think about what could have been if he would have stuck around. Who knows? You know, would they have ever allowed him to do some of the, you know, some of the ideas that he did on these solo albums? Probably not. They should have, but that wasn't meant to be. All right, my number 15, I'm going to go to 84's Till We Have Faces. I will say this is one of my favorite covers out of all of his solo albums. I love this cover. I mean, she was his ex-wife or girlfriend, whatever, was such
ex-wife.
Yeah, was such an amazing, amazing painter. And unfortunately, I don't love this album. I like parts of it a lot. Matilda Smith Williams' Home for the Aged is a really cool track. A lot of really cool drum and percussive parts. The guitar solos are awesome. You know, Myopia, of course, great, upbeat, catchy. What's My Name kind of like foreshadows a lot of the world music stuff. I think that was, you know, soon to become really big. Rio Connection rocks. I like the flute on there. Overall, though, I think the album itself is kind of lacking. It's not a very long album, which I guess, you know, is pretty good. But great cover art, some really good songs, some not so good songs. I think for me, a lot of his 80s albums are kind of patchy. They're like there's some good stuff, some not so good stuff. But that's, I guess, with a lot of artists, right?
So we're at number 14.
14, yep.
I have two. I don't have a physical copy, but Till We Have Faces is number 14 for me. I've always loved What's My Name. It's just the Brazilian type feel to it. Just kind of, you know, it's not one of those I go back to on occasion. I mean, there's certain albums I do go back to, but What's My Name was probably the one that I really enjoyed the most on that record.
Yeah. Yep. Hit or miss. As is my next one. Which is right around from the same time period, right? Yeah, 1983. Highly Strung. Another pretty interesting. I mean, the cover art is kind of cool, kind of weird, but I mean, how about the back? It's kind of Marillion-ish there, right? In a weird way. I kind of dig that. But so this is his last album with Charisma Records, and you know, it's fairly commercial. And I think, you know, you mentioned it before, the record company pressure probably saying, Steve, crank out some hits. You know, there's some good stuff on here. Casino Royale, it's got its moments. Cell 151, I believe, was like a minor hit in the UK, right? It's pretty catchy. To me, Call 151 or Cell 151, sorry, almost sounds like a precursor to what he and Steve Howe did together in GTR. Or maybe what GTR should have been, because I think for a lot of people, GTR was kind of a disappointment. So, but I dig that song. Always Somewhere Else, really good instrumental. Great guitar and keyboard work in that. Give It Away, pretty appealing pop song. Group Therapies, kind of got some fusion going in that. Hackett's Pieces is pretty cool. Another kind of guitar and keyboard fest, and kind of, again, I think like a part one of Hackett to Bits, which we would see on the GTR album. So for me, this album, I think, is I would have actually liked if the GTR albums kind of sounded like this. Even though this is not a fantastic album all the way through, I think there's elements on here that you kind of hear on that GTR album, and I think it's a little bit more successful than that was. Although I dig the GTR album, but I think that was in a way kind of a disappointment. I expected a lot more from it. But yeah, so Highly Strung is my number 14.
All right, so we're at number 13.
Lucky 13.
Lucky 13. I'm going to go back on another one I don't have a physical copy of, but I'm going to go with Feedback 86, which was an album that was shelved during the GTR sessions. Wasn't released till 2000. Has Chris Thompson from Manfred Mann on it, so you got some great vocals there. And Brian May plays a guitar, or is on one of the tracks where they do dual guitar. And there's a track with Bonnie Tyler. So it's one of those, sometimes you can see why it was shelved, but Chris Thompson's a great vocalist, and I think some of his vocals on it are fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. It's my number 13 as well. And there it is right there. Another cool album cover, I think. Yeah, I mean, you could totally tell, that this album, a lot of these songs were kind of put together and written in 86. I mean, because it kind of sounds like that. But and some of the material was supposed to be for the aborted second GTR album, and that didn't happen either. But there's some good tracks on here. Cassandra kicks ass. That's a song with Brian May and Steve dueling it out. That's one of my favorite songs from Steve throughout this whole decade, I think. Really great song. Chris Thompson sounds amazing on that, and he sings on a couple other tracks. What else we got? Slot Machine, Stadium of the Damned, has that kind of 80s big, production synths, all sorts of stuff. Don't Fall is kind of a catchy rocker. The Gulf has a nice mix of acoustic and electric guitars. It's kind of got that big bombastic sound to it, and lots of shredding from Hackett. So not a bad album, I think, considering it's mostly leftover stuff that was never used. I think it works pretty well, actually. So I kind of dig it. That's my number 13. So
all right,
we matched on one so far. That's not bad.
Number 12, Cured. And the only reason why I have this as high as I do, I mean, when I first got it a long time ago, I was kind of disappointed. But I have this is a recent Defector dual disc where I have it's live at the Reading Festival 1981, which is this tour, and the songs just are fantastic live, like Overnight Sleeper and Air Conditioned Nightmare. I mean, they just come out live, amazing. And I've really grown to like Funny Feeling. I guess that was kind of an attempt at a hit, and Hope I Don't Wake was another one. But just live, these songs really shine. And then that's probably not a reason to have this high, but I've grown an attachment over the years. It's one of those ones where I didn't like it first, which I know you've had a show where some albums you didn't like at first, now you've really grown to.
Yeah,
I've grown an attachment to this over the years. It's some quality stuff.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that happens a lot as we age a little bit, right? Those albums that just didn't work for us back in the day, and now we're like, but you know what? I mean, I know you've recommended me to check out that reissue of Defector.
With the Reading Festival, live at Reading Festival,
with the live stuff, and I can just imagine that some of those songs probably do sound better live than they do on the studio, because they're a little tame on the studio. Yeah.
Plus, you have a real drum sound.
Yeah, exactly.
But Overnight Sleeper, I couldn't believe when I heard that live. I'm like, oh my god! And then I went back to the studio track, and I was like, oh, I can see the difference already. It was like night and day. Yeah. I was like, I couldn't believe these are the same songs.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely got to check that out then. I will put that on my wish list. All right. So that was where we're at 12, right?
Yeah.
All right. How about 2003's To Watch the Storms? Some good stuff on here. In fact, again, another one of those albums that I think there's some tremendous stuff on, and some songs that are okay. Mechanical Bride is amazing. Love that. Circus of Becoming, the kind of quirky The Devil is an Englishman, which I think, kind of a neat song. I'm not nuts about the vocals. Again, it's kind of got that spoken word thing. Steve's trying to be real cute type of thing. It's like, but I like the song itself. The musically, it's really good. Wind and Sand and Stars is kind of pastoral and lush. Reminds me of like old Genesis stuff. You got the mix of classical and prog and Rebecca. which is a cool tune. Moon Under the Water has got some really nice nylon string guitar. So all in all, not a bad album. One of his first moving into the 2000s. And I think for the most part, it works pretty well. And again, another kind of interesting album cover art there.
That was the tour where he played his first Near Fest, 2003.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And that's still another cover art by his ex-wife, Kim.
Yeah, that was one of the last ones, right?
The one after that's the last one, because then
Okay.
they got divorced, I think, around 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at number 11.
11.
I'm going to do another one I don't have a physical copy. Your audience is going to kill me. Beyond the Shrouded Horizon. Released in 2011. It's basically, it's got such a Middle Eastern feel. So different from the album before that, which I really adore. We'll talk about that later. But another one of those ones that I've heard and I just didn't go out and buy because it just didn't grab me. I mean, the Middle Eastern feel there's a lot of songs with the Middle Eastern feel to it, and it's just something that I'm not geared towards when it comes to his playing.
Yeah,
So,
I totally hear you. Like I always say, you can't love everything, right?
No, especially if he's my all-time favorite guitar player.
He's got so much material, so yeah, I totally get it. All right, so my number 11, I'm going to go to 2006, Wild Orchids. The album that some people love and some people cringe at, or the album cover, I should say.
That's the last one Kim did.
That's the last one she did, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is a pretty good album. I think there's some really enjoyable stuff on here. You got Transylvanian Express. Again, more, the love of vampires and all that kind of gothic stuff, which always seems to pop up on his albums. Great guitar work on that particular song. It's a good rocker. Downstreet, upbeat, lots of groove. A girl called Linda totally reminds me of the Beatles. It's like, and that's something that Steve doesn't really do often. And I think it really works. I'm surprised he never went down that road before. Ego and ID, really good hard rocker, lots of screaming, like whammy bar guitars. I love when he just goes berserk like that. Wolfwork is a really cool kind of dramatic prog rock song. Lots of musical twists and turns on that. I don't know. Overall, I think there's a pretty strong album. Really good band here as well. So yeah, it just misses out in my top 10, but it's a good one.
All right. Let me see here. Where we at? We're at number 10.
Yep.
Number 10. This is the last physical copy I do not have of his, but I'm going to go with To Watch the Storms. Mechanical Bride, Rebecca, as you said earlier, fantastic tunes. Kind of, if you think about it, this is the album that kind of was what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of brought him back into not the mainstream, but kind of the prog mainstream that, hey, I'm back and I'm doing some solo albums. And I think Nearfest 2003 helped his PR a little bit.
Yep.
So I'm going to go with To Watch the Storms at number 10.
Yeah, and he's been pretty prolific since then.
Yeah.
Because I think throughout the 90s, he wasn't doing a lot of albums. And then all of a sudden the 2000s kicked in after the Nearfest. I think there was kind of like a resurgence, and hey, Hackett's
That's
back.
the word I was looking for. Resurgence.
Yeah. And he's been pretty active ever since. So, yeah. All right. So my number 10 is Beyond the Shrouded Horizon. So, nice mix of rockers and more atmospheric, classical leaning pieces on here. You got the kind of bluesy Catwalk. You got She Said Maybe, which has some absolutely sizzling guitars on there. A lot of, lush keyboards throughout this album. And he's got the classical guitar kind of pokes in every now and then here. Looking for Fantasy is another cool one. Prairie Angel I like quite a bit. And then kind of like that, it's kind of like heavy prog, and then it's folky. Loch Lomond, the kickoff track, like that a lot. The Phoenix Flown's got kind of a nice sense of drama in it. And then I love the big epic Turn This Island Earth at the end of the album, which I think is probably the strongest cut on the album. But I don't know. I dig this album. I think it's pretty good. And notice how now, he went from all those album covers that were drawn by his ex, and now like all the album covers that have like come out in the last 20 years have a similar kind of like atmospheric look to them, and this weird, photography that accentuates like darkness and clouds and all that kind of stuff. So interesting how like both kind of times in his career, we've got like similar look and feel to the album covers in a way, depending on the era. So, but anyway, I dig that album. It's pretty good.
Number 9, Wild Orchards. As we said, Kim's last artwork for Steve. One of the songs you didn't mention, Transylvania Express, is fantastic, but one of the songs you didn't mention that I love is Set Your Compass. Has such a nice moody feel to it. This was 2005. I remember getting it when it first came out. And, just another album saying that he's back.
Yeah.
Because in the 90s, I think he did 2. He did Guitar Noir in 92, 93, and then in 99 he did Darktown, but he didn't really tour for Darktown. And then he played Nearfest in 2003, and that kind of pushed him and getting popular again with touring. And then he's starting to release the album like every other year.
Yeah.
So number 9's Wild Orchards.
All right, my number 9. How about Out of the Tunnel's Mouth from 2009? I dig this album. This is quite good. Again, really good mix of kind of the classical guitar and the searing electric, which he, most of his albums now have a nice mix of the two. You got Nomads, which has lots of a nice classical feel on it. You got Anthony Phillips on 12-string on Emerald and Ash. I almost said Gash, which is a really cool tune. Tubehead, he's just shredding on that song, right? It's almost like that's his like Satriani song. Love that. You got the mix of flamenco and electric guitar on Ghost in the Glass. Still Waters, another really good track on here. Monster tone on that. In fact, I love his guitar tone on this whole album. Last Train to Istanbul, pretty majestic, nice and proggy. This is a really strong album, I think. And I don't remember, was this his first album for Inside Out? Or did he have one before this? I don't even remember.
No, that was the first one.
It was the first one. I thought so.
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah, pretty cool. I dig this album. So that's my number 9.
I'm going to go with Highly Strung for number 8. Camino Royale, Cell 151, Give It Away, Walking Through the Walls, Group Therapy. I know it's an 80s record, but man, oh man, what a rebound from Cured. Love it. Highly Strung. And
would you say if he had a good label backing him, I'm not to knock the label, but if they really knew what they were doing, I mean, there were potentially some hits on that album.
Yeah, well, and so I guess Cell 151 was a hit as you say, in the UK, and there's a video of it, but I can't see it on YouTube anymore. They deleted it.
They took it off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird video where he's out in the middle of wilderness, and it's almost like they all took a acid trip before they shot the video.
Missed opportunity on that album, I think. All right, number 8. I'm going to go with the most recent one, At the Edge of Light from 2019. Again, I'm looking at these album covers, there's kind of similar stuff going on there, but I dig this album. I think there's a lot of real magical stuff on here. I agree with you. They're long. There's lots of vocals, but there's still, I think, a lot of good musical things going on here. Under the Eye of the Sun, you got the catchy Underground Railroad. You got the mix of classical and prog on Those Golden Wings, which has, a lot of really good acoustic electric guitars. What else we got in here? Hungry Years, kind of breezy and poppy. It's a pretty good tune. And then you got Descent, which has like elements of King Crimson on it, I think, which is pretty neat. Then you got Conflict, more kind of jagged guitars, which he's known for. I don't know. I enjoyed this album. I think when it first came out, I listened to it quite a bit, and I still to this day, I think it's one of his stronger ones. So that is my number 8.
My number 7 is Out of the Tunnel's Mouth, 2010. Saw him at Nearfest when he played, when I realized Nick Beggs was his bass player dressed in a kilt. And then I saw him later, about a week or two later, he Renaissance opened for him. So I saw him twice on the tour. It was the first time I'd ever got a chance to see him. And so the songs you mentioned, Emerald and Ash, Sleepers, my favorite's Fire of the Moon, the opening track of the album. And just something about it just got me right into it. And Last Train to Istanbul is fantastic.
Yeah, that's
So
great too.
that's my, oh boy, did I screw up? Oh, that's my number 7. Okay.
There you go.
I had it. I screwed up.
It's hard keeping track of these sometimes, especially when you
Yeah,
have
I have the
to
notes
stack
here
them.
too and everything.
All right, my number, what are we to 7? My number 7, I'm going to go to 1999's Darktown. Could even rank higher sometimes. I don't know. What I love about this album is like I think Hackett decided to let his guitar do the talking. So in other words, like shut up and play your guitar is most of this album. Lots of crazy wild playing on this album. I think if you're looking for Hackett like shredding up a storm and you want to hear what's the album where you get the most lethal Hackett guitar work, I would lean towards this one. There's probably a couple you could pick, but this is one of them, I think. You got Omega Metallicas is this kind of weird, fiery techno style beats with these rampage and almost like heavy metal guitars. You got, sax and more aggressive guitar on the title track. You got Days of Long Ago, which is absolutely gorgeous. With the vocals from Jim Diamond, who, quite frankly, I wish he would have used more because I think he's a pretty good singer. You got the wonderful classical guitar on Dreaming with Open Eyes. You got Twice Around the Sun, which has really nice kind of lyrical guitar lines. Totally dig that a lot. In Memoriam, pretty haunting, beautiful song. I just think this is overall very, very strong album. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty high on your list based on conversations we've had before, right?
All right. Number 6, which was going to be number 7, but I screwed that up. So I have this on LP. Wolf Flight, Out of the Body, Wolf Flight, Love Song to a Vampire. I mean, it just works. There's something about the thing about Steve as a vocalist and a musician. Some of his albums are just fantastic, and the other albums are kind of like, But I guess that's with all bands. But this for me just works beautifully. I just has a nice. It just has a nice feel to it, and it just nice transition from each track to each track, and you never get bored. It's one of my favorites. That's why it's at number 6.
Yep.
So Wolf Light is 2015.
Yep. Well, we are matching once again. That is also my number 6. I like this album a lot, and big props. I'm a big dog lover, and I love wolves, and that's a nice appeal for me on the cover there, obviously. But yeah, it's a big, bright symphonic album, I think, and lots of different guitar textures and tones on here, which I love. The wheels turning, Love Song to a Vampire, you mentioned. The title track is great. Corsican Fire, Black Thunder. I think for me is finally when I started to say to myself, you know what? His vocals have gotten better over the years, and I really actually kind of enjoy them on this album more so than I think on some of the other albums where he, insists on singing everything. But yeah, I think a really pleasing album, a lot of variety on here, and it's out of his more recent ones, it's one of the strongest ones, I still think.
All right, number 5. We're getting down to the top 5. I'm going with Darktown, In Memoriam, Man Overboard, The Golden Age of Steam, Darktown. I remember when this was released, I was so excited. Went out and bought it, loved it. Has a great vibe to it, and In Memoriam is just so atmospheric and so emotional, and that's why I had this into my top 5. 1999.
There you go. All right, my number 5, I'm going to go with Night Siren from 2017. So unlike you, I kind of dig I call this Steve's Goes Kashmir album, because a lot of the tunes on here sound like, Led Zeppelin's Kashmir or have that similar type feel. The whole album's got these Middle Eastern musical themes going through it, and I kind of dig it. I think it's really different. He took a big chance on this, but I think it kind of works. The vocals are pretty cool. You got Behind the Smoke, El Nino, Inca Terra, In the Skeleton Gallery, the really engaging Martian Sea. I dig quite a bit. I don't know. I like this album. I think it's really progressive. It's really different. And I know, some people, I've heard many people say that some artists kind of overuse the whole Middle Eastern thing, but I don't mind it on here because I think it's not something that he's done often at all. And I think it kind of works. He took a chance. For me, I don't know, it works. I dig this album. So that's my number 5, right? Yeah.
All right, number 4. Now, people can attest on Facebook that I have these lists of albums, and they stay with me for a while. So the top four has been with me for a long, long time. So I'm going to go with number 4, Defector. I mean, the Steps, Jacuzzi, Leaving, Slogans. Jacuzzi is just has a vibe to it. The instrumentals on are just gorgeous. The Steps with the opening intro of his brother on the violin, who I miss dearly. I would love to see him live, but just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I remember buying this, I think, in the mid 90s, and that first track, the opening notes on the violin, is just gets you right in. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So Defector's number 4.
Defector's my number 4 as well. And I will say, you mentioned Jacuzzi. So for me, Jacuzzi to me sounds like what Genesis would have sounded like had he stayed in the band. Because I hear Jacuzzi and I'm like, yeah, that's what could have been, you know. And then there were 3, or Duke, or the Genesis album, if these guys all kind of stayed together. So it's a great song. Time to Get Out. It's got a great hook on it. The Steps you mentioned is amazing. 2 Vamps as guests. I mean, cool classical in that. You know, also what's really cool too, if you got the reissue, is that B-side, Hercules Unchained.
Yeah.
It's like, what the it's like this big heavy metal kind of punk rocker. It's like totally different for Steve, man, but he's like absolutely killing it. But and I always kind of dug this weird album cover as well. But yeah, this is obviously one of his classics. I mean, his early stuff is pretty special.
Yeah, the vocals of Pete Hicks it works. I mean, he does a great job with the backup vocals, but Pete is, you know, and every time they played live, poor Pete would have to stand in the back because Steve would be up front. Now Nat is kind of like on the same side of him, so it kind of makes them like they're even on the stage. But exactly. One of the other songs I wanted to say on Defector that I just adore is Leaving. I mean, it has this just emotional, atmospheric vocal vibe to it. And it's just too short. It's another one of those songs like Rush's Madrigal. Just so beautiful, and all of a sudden, boom, it ends.
Yeah, like what, 2.5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at number 3. Please Don't Touch. The 2 fantastic Walsh tunes. I mean, fantastic, gorgeous. I mean, Walsh is one of my favorite vocalists. The only drawback is the Hoping Love Will Last. That doesn't really never do much for me, but you know, the 2 tracks with Richie Havens, beautiful. And of course the instrumental that kind of made him want to leave Genesis, because Tony was like, that's not how we work. We're not putting it on the album. Please don't touch. And if you read on the back, it always says, when you're playing it, please turn it up loud. So, right. But the 2 Walsh tunes, just gorgeous. And I remember reading a while ago on Steve's website, way back when, Walsh's website, where he talked about how he loved working with Hackett. And I think Phil from Kansas also plays on some of the drums too. But guests galore, fantastic. Showed that he could do this on his own, and so this is my number 3.
My number 3 as well. I think really the only song on here that I'm not nuts about is the Randy Crawford song, Hoping Love Will Last. I mean, you know, it's a nice pop tune, but almost kind of doesn't fit on the rest of the album. I think Richie Havens sounds great on here. Walsh is amazing. I mean, you listen to, like, you know, Narnia and the other track that he plays on
Racing an A,
and it's just like, man, I mean, those could be Kansas songs, right? Just really, really cool stuff. And his guitar work is amazing on here. Always love the album cover, love the production of the album. The whole thing is great. You know, Icarus Ascending, great song. So yeah, and like you mentioned, you know, this is what he wanted to do. This is why he's like, I can't do this stuff in Genesis, so I'm gonna go off and make this album, and knocks it out of the park.
All right, we're down to the top 2.
So it'll be interesting. So, you know, before we get to our top 2, I had a hard time with the top 2 because I knew they were both going to be in my top 2, and I flip-flopped these a couple times. I'm sticking with my most recent choice, but I remember when I was putting my list together, I'm like, I had this weird feeling that Anthony's top 2 are going to be the same as mine. It'll be interesting to see which one gets at number 1, which one's number 2. So I'm really looking forward to see if we went the exact same route here and basically in our top 4, or if we have a mix up at the top 2. Let's.
Well, this would be a little more difficult if one song on the album wasn't such a goofy tune, but that kind of ruined it for me. So that's the reason why I have the other one number one. And it's been one of my top albums of my life for a long time. But number two, Spectral Mornings. You know, Every Day, The Virgin and the Gypsy, Clocks is just unbelievable with the soaring guitar. The only song that just ruins it for me, and I know it's part of the album, it's part of the flow, is the Ballad of the Decomposing Man. But I always thought that was the goofiest tune. I've been skipping it since I bought the album in 1994. But Spectral Mornings, Tiger Moth, just and Peter Hicks, a nice collab with Steve and Peter on Every Day, and that guitar solo is phenomenal.
Oh,
The middle guitar solo is
killer.
one of the top solos. If you talk to any Genesis or any Hackett fan, they always mention Every Day's guitar solo in the top 5 easily. Just atmospheric, just awesome. I don't know how to explain it. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So Spectral Morning is my number two.
It's my number two as well. So we went the same route here. Yeah, I mean, arguably, you could say this album contains probably his most gorgeous guitar playing out of any of his albums. I mean, there's a lot of great guitar playing on a lot of these albums, but there's something about this. I mean, this is a prog rock classic for sure. And yeah, it still sounds pretty fresh today. A lot of really great compositions on here, and some just absolutely stunning guitar work. And I really like the cover art on this, because it's like, you know what? Steve was always kind of like the quiet, unassuming guy. And when you look at this, I mean, he's like looking down. It's got this tranquil feel to it. And I think it perfectly exemplifies like who he was, or who he is, I should say, as a person. If you've ever talked to him, I mean, he's a really gentle kind of, he's like a loving guy, and just a really, really gentle, warm human being. And that's kind of what you get. It's like a very soft painting. And that's kind of who he is as a human being. And yeah, a lovely album.
And that's the first where Kim did the artwork. That's the first album where she did the artwork. All right, so we're at numero uno, right?
Yep.
I think
I think everybody knows what it is, right?
Pete, a lot of people make fun of me because I have a top 5, top 10 albums of all time, and it never changes. But for me, this is my number 4 all-time record. Ace of Wands, Shadow of Hierophant, Star of Sirius with Phil, 1 to 8. I bought this on cassette probably back in 1989, knowing who Steve Hackett was, but not really knowing who he was. And I've just been hooked ever since. Just the magic about this album, with the carrot cards. Is that what I'm saying? The tarot cards. There we go.
Tarot cards, yeah.
But Ace of Wands is just so beautiful. I mean, some of his playing. And this is the album that showed him that he could do a record and would be successful, or could be successful.
Yeah. It's like a
Shadow of Hierophant is actually a Genesis song they were worked on from the Foxtrot sections.
Well, I mean,
remember he asked Mike Rutherford if he could use it. Mike's like, sure, go ahead. And we got Mike Oldfield's sister on lead vocals, or if you want to call it, like what are they, yodel, little yodeling, or
yeah, a little
when
bit.
She sings, you can't understand a word she's saying, but Sally's got a beautiful voice. So this is my number 1. It's my number all-time 4. It's my 4th all-time favorite record. I have it on I have the remaster, I have the original on CD, I have the LP, and I have it on cassette. So I'm looking for the 8-track.
I have my copy is this old Caroline Records copy.
The blue plate, yes.
I've had this for a long time. Yeah, I mean, ages. Yeah, I mean, everything you said is absolutely true. It's an absolute prog classic. What's really weird about listening to this album? Of course, he released this album while he was still in the band. You can literally pick 3 or 4 songs on here that like you just like hit yourself in the head being like, man, that would have made a great Genesis song. Like, like Star of Sirius. Come on. Wouldn't that have sounded great on Foxtrot or Selling England by the Pound? I mean, what were these guys thinking that they didn't want to use any of these songs? I don't get it. Just totally don't get it. But man, and there's loads of Mellotron on here, and you got, 12-string and acoustic and electric, all sorts of stuff. The vocals are great. Just an absolute brilliant album. Love the cover art. Just absolutely adore it. I mean, that's like such a classic little melody right there. Ace of Wands, such a great song. Great musician.
A lot of Genesis fans call it the lost Genesis album.
Well, it kind of is. It
Yeah.
kind of is. I remember the first time I ever heard it, I was like, wow, when did he do this? This sounds, I mean, because it's got fills on it and, mics on it. And it's just like, this sounds just like a Genesis album. Why isn't it? It's like, well, because they basically denied most of these songs and they didn't want to use them. And Steve got to a point where he's like, you know what? I got to go out on my own because I got all this creativity, all this stuff I want to do. And like I said, you look at those first 2, 3 albums, 4 albums. I mean, there's so much material on those that could have been really great Genesis songs. As they are, they're great Steve Hackett songs, and that's okay too, right? So that's what we got. So there you have it, everybody. 17 Steve Hackett albums ranked from our least favorite to our favorites. Again, want to give some props to the Genesis Revisited albums. There's 2 of them. Those are fantastic if you want to hear Steve and his more recent bands doing updated renditions of Genesis classics. You got, Bay of Kings, and I'm drawing a blank on the other classical one. Oh, you got to talk about that one. Yeah, absolutely.
This is for live from Germany, November 78. It opens up kind of like the Land of the Thousand, like a little excerpt of Tiger Moth right into Please Don't Touch, and it's just pure magic from track 1 to 9 tracks. It's phenomenal. And there's another one I have. It's a bootleg. It's from Live at Montreux, which is the Defector tour we plays, and Every Day, Jacuzzi, just magical. If you're a Hackett fan and you like DVDs, get those.
Yeah. And also check out the Live at Nearfest live album too, which is very, very cool. So I got that as well. In fact, he's got a bunch of live albums. I didn't pull them all out, but and
I have a bunch of bootlegs. I have a bunch of bootlegs.
There's all sorts of stuff out there. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff out there. And I dig the classical stuff too. I think is pretty good. I'm not as big into the blues album that he did. And, he does like in the 90s, a couple of these albums, he would do a blues song or 2 with harmonica and stuff like that. It's like, I get it. He's into that too, but that's really not what I want to hear Steve doing. But he's just great no matter what. And I've had the pleasure of meeting him in person, and I've interviewed him twice, and he's just a true gentleman, and he's got some great stories, and just a really warm human being, and someone you really enjoy talking to. So and that comes through in his music, I think. So there you have it, everybody. So want to urge everybody in the comments below to give us your top 5, your top 10, or rank the whole catalog of Steve Hackett. Curious to see what everybody thinks. And I want to thank Anthony Ferraro for coming on the show today. And
thanks for having me.
Herculean task, right? Or this Hackett-lean task here that we did today. So hopefully you weren't too nervous and you had a good time here on your first Sea of Tranquility.
I was eating my words a lot. I'll be honest. I mean, you're so articulate. I'm just kind of like, oh boy.
Everybody gets a little nervous the first time they come on. That's okay. You'll be a pro. You do it one more time, you'll be a pro. Trust me. So, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your love for Steve Hackett, because that's what it's all about. I think it's really cool when you can get people to talk about some of these artists and these albums that who really love and appreciate the music. So that really is an extra added plus to doing a show like this. So everybody visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. We've got more viewer appreciation days coming up this weekend, as a matter of fact. So Jamie Laszlo is coming back on the show. We're going to rank the catalog of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. We've got Dawn the Chaldean coming up probably next week. I think we're going to each give our favorite 10 songs that Mr. Ronnie James Dio has ever sang on. So that's coming up next week. And we've got more of this happening in the weeks ahead. So stay tuned, everybody. And for Anthony Ferraro, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody. We'll see you later on. Take care. And have a great Thanksgiving for all of our American friends. In case I don't talk to you before then, but I'm sure I will. So take care. And Anthony, thanks again. We'll see you soon, everybody.
Thanks, Pete.